everyone, and welcome back to Traditionally Speaking. I'm pleased to say that this is the very first episode that we're going to be talking about Christmas pop culture, films, TV, music, and on this particular occasion, we're going to be looking at Christmas TV movies that have been filmed here in bonnie Scotland.
Which I'll tell you, it's you surprised me when you told me that, and I hadn't seen either of the movies you're going to be talking about. But I'm excited to know that that has actually been done. So, and I'll bet you a lot of our listeners are going to be familiar with this. So let us know if you are. But yeah, Tom, please continue.
Well, it's interesting because, in the grand tradition of Traditionally Speaking, we're going to be looking at American film productions that have been set here in Scotland. So the first one is Christmas in the Highlands. Now that came out in December 2019. It was a Lifetime Christmas movie filmed by Tri-Venture Films. And the other one, more recently, was A Castle for Christmas. Now that was made for Netflix, and it starred Brooke Shields and Carrie Elwes. So it had a really big promotional campaign behind it, and certainly has met with interesting responses over here.
I'm excited to hear about that one, especially. And you gave me some hints on some things I think our listeners are going to flip when you tell them.
Yeah, I mean, the interesting thing is there is a kind of commonality between the two films, which we'll look a bit closer at as we go along. But the first film, Christmas in the Highlands, it was directed by Ryan Dewar. It stars Brooke Burfitt and Dan Jeannot, and it was filmed actually not too far from here in Angus, which is a county on the east coast of Scotland, and it was filmed in the very famous Glamis Castle. Now, Glamis Castle was the residential home of the Queen Mother, who was the wife of King George VI. So by that, she was the grandmother of the current King Charles III. And it's a remarkable place to visit. This is a castle actually that has a very long history, because it goes back all the way to King Malcolm of Macbeth, if you remember the Shakespearean play. Now, he once resided at Glamis Castle, and it's very interesting to think it goes that far back, because if you see it now, the grounds are very modern, and it's a place that merges the traditional and the modern quite well. And this is something that's picked up on in the film. Basically, yeah, it's all about an American perfume executive who comes to Scotland in search of a very particular perfume which belongs to this family of noble blood who reside at Glamis Castle. Now, what's really interesting about it in particular is if you know Scotland well, there are all sorts of different places round about the Glamis Castle area which were used as filming locations for this movie. So you have Pickering's Gin Distillery, you have the Edinburgh Christmas Market, there's a wonderful Christmas tree farm in Tayside. All of these things are featured. But what's also nice is there's a reindeer from the Cairngorm Reindeer Centre. There's a visit to Pitlochry, which is an absolutely fantastic town in Highland Perthshire. And you also get a cameo by Ian Burnett, who is the famous Highland chocolatier. So there's really something for everybody in this film.
You make me want to go visit that just to visit the other areas.
Yeah, it's something that really shows off, a lot of really interesting Scottish scenery, and without in any way wanting to deride the screenplay, I'll have to say there are not a lot of surprises in how this story ends, but getting there is fun. It's all about the journey rather than the arrival, and it is nobody's going to say it's the most original film, but it's certainly a lot of fun finding out exactly what's going to happen with this perfume and with this star-crossed romance.
Sounds like a fun movie, and it certainly sounds like it'd be worth watching.
Well, there has been a little bit of controversy about it over here, because the aristocratic Scottish family all have exceptionally received pronunciation kind of delivery, and people have said this is not really how Scottish people speak. Well, well, the interesting thing, of course, is if you've been privately educated, odds are, you've either been educated in England or you've been educated with a kind of accentless delivery here in Scotland at one of the private education establishments. So consequently, it's not entirely out with the bounds of possibility that you could be an aristocratic Scottish family and sound like that, with the traditional Oxford.
However, if any of the characters don't look like they've been educated in that manner, then their accent's a little off.
Yeah. It's a little bit like if you remember, these old movies from the golden age of Hollywood in the 30s and 40s, and a lot of people like Mary Astor and Cary Grant have that mid-Atlantic accent, which kind of comes from everywhere and nowhere at the same time. It's a little bit like that.
You just have to use a little imagination, that's all.
So yeah, it's very much in that vein. It's probably not the most realistic film, but something, if you're in the right mood for it, it's a lot of fun.
And it sounds like it'd be a good way to spend a couple hours. So
Oh yeah, absolutely. And and I would say it has an extra purpose, which is if you're thinking about visiting, Highland Perthshire or Angus, when you're over here in Scotland, then it's a fantastic travelogue for all these places, and quite charming performances as well. There are people like Geraldine Somerville in there. There's a cameo by Caprice Bure, the famous model and actress. So I mean, there's lots and lots of good fun, and actually a really good original score by Ian Fisher as well, which is well worth the price of attendance, as they say.
Well, moving on to the next film, this one I'm really anxious for you to talk about.
Yeah.
Because of the castle itself and its legends.
Yes, well, this is an amazing film actually for a variety of reasons. First and foremost being the fact that it has an all-star cast. You have Brooke Shields and you have Carrie Elwes, both of whom have long careers in film. I mean, it shows my age a bit, but I still think of Brooke Shields as being the teenage pinball wizard in Tilt. Everybody remembers Carrie Elwes, of course, from The Princess Bride and Robin Hood Men in Tights and many other films.
Definitely, Princess Bride is still one of my very, 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 very top films, and I can't say. I'd be embarrassed to tell you how many times I've watched that. So it's inconceivable.
So both of them are having a great time in this film. One of the major reasons why people like this film is because you have stars in a film who are in their mid-50s, early 60s. It's not a film where everybody is in the prime of youth in their 20s. They're having a lot of fun. There's some amazing location filming in it. And I was saying particularly the cinematography by Michael Coulter is really good, because if you know the places where they're filming, it really makes the most of these various different locations. Basically, the story, I mean, the film's directed by Mary Lambert, and the story is largely about this American author who has caused a scandal with her most recent novel, and she wants to get away from it all. So she comes across to Scotland, and she comes to the ancestral home of her father. He worked as a groundskeeper in a castle, and she meets who she thinks is a handyman, but the handyman is actually a duke who owns the castle. The castle's falling apart, but he's hits on this idea that perhaps if he can convince Brooke Shields to buy the castle, but then he makes her life really untenable, that she will decide to abort the sale, leaves him with the castle, but also he gets to keep the deposit. So that's the conceit behind the film. The reality, of course, is somewhat more romantic. Otherwise, it wouldn't be a Christmas movie.
It wouldn't fit in the genre that very well.
So it's an interesting film because it's actually based in Dalmeny House, which is a a mansion. It's a Gothic revival mansion, and that's just outside Edinburgh. And Edinburgh, for anyone who doesn't know, it's right on the south bank of the River Forth. So some lovely, lovely location filming there. And really, what's good about the whole thing is the fact that they really do use a lot of really interesting, authentic Scottish filming locations very effectively. There is, for instance, South Queensferry, which is right next to the Queensferry crossing bridge. There's Couris and Fife as well, which is somewhere that's been used in Outlander, and they use that as the village of Dunbar. Some beautiful period architecture there. So there's also Tantallon Castle, which was a filming location. They go to visit it throughout the film. So there's all these really interesting places. Again, totally different part of the country from Christmas in the Highlands, but it does a very nice job of showing the real Scotland, the Scotland outside the big cities.
Right, right. And now you had mentioned something particularly interesting about the castle in this one. And I'd love you to tell our listeners about that.
Yeah, I mean it's very interesting, this castle, because quite differently from the castle that's used in the first film, it's, in terms of its actual interior detail, a really fascinating place. And how they used it in the film, without wanting to give too much away, is quite interesting, because of course, in a sense, you have to believe this castle's falling apart. It's somewhere that's seen better days. In reality, of course, Dalmeny House is an amazing mansion house. It's an incredible place to visit, and and it's the exact opposite of the kind of place you see in the film, because it's beautifully kept and maintained, and so many amazing things to see there.
Now, is this the one that is haunted?
No. That's Glam's castle. That's a castle from the first film. I would probably say, though, and I would definitely recommend anyone who goes there not be put off by any supernatural tales. But I would say, if you ask any of the tour guides, they will probably say no, there's no such thing as ghosts. Don't worry about it. The reality of it is, however, there have been all sorts of sightings and hauntings around the area. And a lot of interesting stories as well, all about one of the previous lords of the castle who tried to cheat the devil at cards. So if you're ever there in Glam's Castle, definitely ask one of the tour guides about that story, and you'll be quite amazed at how that turned out.
Wow, there's some interesting tidbits on the side for that. Well, both films sound absolutely charming, and I would like to see the. Now, do you know if they're going to replay those on like Netflix and Lifetime, or was that like a one-time thing?
As far as I know, it's available still to see on Netflix for A Castle for Christmas. Christmas in the Highlands, certainly over here on Movies 24, it gets repeated quite regularly. I'm not massively sure if there are other places you can see it. I think Lifetime channel will have certainly done so. So it's worth a look. Two very, very different takes on life in Scotland. Although I have to say, when it comes to a Scottish accent, Carrie Elwes wins hands down.
Well, here's where we're going to invite our listeners. Please, 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 if you see these or know of where they're being shown, please drop a line on traditionally-speaking.com so that our other listeners might be able to tune in on it. And so I can find it. I mean, I'm not, I don't have as many channels as some people do, but if you see either of these two movies pop up, if you drop a line and let us know, we'd love to share this with other listeners that are interested in seeing it. And plus, tell us your favorite Christmas movie, whether it was filmed in Scotland or the United States. We'd love to know that. So we're going to be talking about a whole lot of movies because I happen to know an absolute expert who recently came out with a new book on Christmas movies of the 90s. So, and also has a wonderful book of the golden age of Christmas, and as well as Christmas in the 80s. So I'll tell you, this guy knows his movies. If you're at all interested in learning more about Christmas movies, you should look up his books, because I'll tell you, I have them and they are fascinating reads. And it's kind of fun to actually, even before you see a movie or afterward, to kind of look these up and see what really went on with these, because Tom explains it in great detail, and including any pitfalls or wonderful things that happen. So, but do let us know if you know about these movies or others like it that you would like our listeners to know.
Well, thank you very much, Joe. That's very kind of you to say that, and I really appreciate those kind words. But one thing I will say about these two TV movies is the one common theme that runs through them is the enduring friendship between our two countries. And nothing speaks more of the friendship between Scotland and the USA than these two films do. So for that reason alone, they're always worth watching, because both protagonists in each of the films, one of them is Scottish, the other is American, and it says a lot actually about how our traditions are similar and yet slightly different. And both of the films talk about that in some detail. So, as I say, for that reason alone, it's worth watching.
And if you've been listening to our podcasts at all, and I invite you to go back and listen to some of the other episodes if you've missed them, you would find out just how different we are in some things and how similar we are in others. And I'll tell you, that makes it all the more interesting, and why we're going to continue this throughout the year and talk about the differences between Scotland and the US and other parts of the world. So, well, Tom, that was I'm excited. I got to find these movies, and I especially want to see the one with Shields and Elvis. So, but yeah, let us know if you find them and know where we can get them. So, and we'll probably have to wait closer to Christmas for it, but maybe not. Sometimes look at Hallmark; they're showing movies, Christmas movies, almost all year round now. So, especially come July.
The exciting thing, of course, is there are so many different angles we can talk about when it comes to film and TV and music and all sorts of other pop culture, where Scotland and the USA have sometimes gone in the same direction and sometimes gone in different directions. So I look forward to discussing all of those different things with you in future episodes.
And I'll tell you, it's something that Tom and I learn more and more about each other and our cultures and how we do things in the States versus how they do things in Scotland. So I'm so enjoying this, Tom, and I hope our listeners are too. I think we're getting some pretty good compliments, so I'm pleased to see that they're enjoying this as much as we are.
Delighted, because there's plenty more still to come.
Yes, we keep finding more and more subjects to talk about. So stay tuned and stay with us, because you're going to find some things that I'll bet you're just going to be absolutely amazed about. Well, with that, Tom, thank you so very much for the reviews on those movies and what they're about. And we'll look forward to having you come visit us next month when we introduce another podcast.
Thanks so much, Joe. And thank you, everyone, for listening. I hope you've enjoyed hearing about these films. And if you have any favourites, do please get in contact with us at traditionally-speaking.com and let us know what your favourites are.
Well, thanks for joining us, folks. Have a great rest of the month.